House Minority Leader Robert Watson.
Yay.
I'm going to be brief because I just want to be here in support of my colleagues. They can defend this idea and propose it more forcefully and eloquently than I can, and I certainly think they've done a great job today. I also want to recognize Representative Costa, Representative Chippendale, Senator Mora, and Representative Gordon are 4 freshman legislators. So I think it's just a reminder yet again why it's so important to have new eyes look at old ideas and remind us that there's some great ideas that aren't being discussed, and leave it to the newest members of this body to bring it forward. And I commend you tremendously. People say, you know, what do you plan on doing when you get elected and you serve? I think they're demonstrating what they plan on doing. They plan on representing the people that sent them here, and they're doing a good job. I couldn't be prouder to be part of this today. Thank you, Dan.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Leader Watson. And I simply want to reiterate, if I haven't made it perfectly clear, this is a nonpartisan issue. Each and every individual, every citizen in this state, in this country, regardless of political affiliation or stripe, should be interested in the freedom of choice. Freedom of choice. And I want to emphasize that and put that out there for my colleagues across the aisle. Come and talk to me, ask me questions. We can talk about this, debate this. This is what it's all about. The animating contest, an exciting contest, a gathering and amalgamation of ideas to come out with something that is proper, true, and just for the people. And at this point in time, I will open up the podium to questions.
You mentioned the Florida ruling, but isn't it true that there have been other rulings around the country that have reflected an opposite viewpoint? And won't this issue eventually be decided by the courts and not here in state legislators?
Well, what you say is true. There's actually been two court rulings in favor of the Patient Protection and Affordability Care Act, and 2 rulings against, against being from Florida and from Virginia. The most recent being by Judge Vinson in the Florida court that ruled specifically against the individual mandate, which is what this legislation is all about as well, specifically the individual mandate. That being said, yes, I certainly and absolutely believe that it will either go before the appellate court and or the Supreme Court.
Is this, I just looked at it for the first time here. Is this nullification? Is this just saying, you know, the heck with you, we're not following the law, the law says this and we're saying no?
Well, I think the heck with you is rather strong language, and if I was going to go down, I'd let it
way down.
But but technically, it has been termed as nullification under the 10th Amendment, which affords the sovereign states the protection against or check against unconstitutional federal mandates. Yes. Yes, sir.
Dan, do you see this bill as being the single guard against you know, the federals, you know, making us take, you know, buy something we don't want, or do you see additional bills that will be needed to support this?
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, I would think that this piece of legislation in itself should be enough to codify or reassert what we believe are our constitutional rights. And then it would be up to either the Attorney General or perhaps another piece of legislation to enforce the law. You know?
Oh, you bring up a good point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to you know, interject the in the middle of while you're speaking. Even if it does pass the House and you know, Beth Murray's mirror bill in the Senate, even if it does get passed through and everything, would it still have to be backed by the Attorney General against the federal government? In other words, does the General Assembly actually have the right to go up against the federal court should they decide to move forward?
Go against the federal court.
In other words, like if it passes the General Assembly, it gets blessed, it gets signed by the governor, is that good enough, or does the Attorney General actually have to use that as a tool to go in other words, stand at the state line to the federal government and go, we ain't buying that.
Well, we've got to remember there's a delineation. I mean, there's a separation of powers. There's different functions of different bodies.
Yeah.
The General Assembly, we are the lawmakers. And the Attorney General, it's his obligation and duty as the chief lawmaker in the state to uphold and enforce the laws that pass the muster of the General Assembly.
Okay, thank you.
I guess what it comes down to is, if someone reads this law and says, okay, I'm not buying the insurance, and gets hit with a penalty, how does this protect them? Or do they get whacked with a penalty anyway?
Well, there isn't any actual built-in protection within the bill itself. However, as I just stated, it's the obligation and the duty constitutionally under oath by the Attorney General as the chief lawmaker, or I'm sorry, a chief enforcement officer to enforce those laws.
Can you supersede federal law?
If, under the 10th Amendment, the federal law is deemed unconstitutional by a sovereign state, as has been indicated by 28 of the states in the Union, filing suit via their attorney generals or legislative, through their legislative bodies. If there's any... Yes, sir?
Has Rhode Island joined with the other states, the 26 states that were involved in that Florida lawsuit, or do they intend to join?
I don't have any knowledge of any intention by the Attorney General at this point in time in joining the suit.
Okay, so Rhode Island has not. Okay, is that what you're saying? Rhode Island has not, and you don't know of any plan to do so?
I do not. I understand that there was a Senate bill introduced last year, which is basically the same thing as that we're introducing today. But of course, I shouldn't say of course, it did not pass.
Do you think this bill has any legs, or is this just an attempt to get the issue out in the public?
Well, I would hope that it has legs, Mr. Baker. I mean, and that was the intention that I had when I sent out a personalized signed invitation to each and every member of the House. Like I said, this is a nonpartisan issue. Each and every individual, each and every representative, senator, or general officer should have an interest in protecting our citizens' right to choose. So it is my hope. Of course, I can't see into the future. I wish I had a crystal ball. I could make things all better if that was the case. But I would hope that we could put aside the labels that come after our names and come together in this thing in protecting the rights of our citizens. Yes, sir.
I think what this piece of legislation will ultimately do, if it passes and is enacted in Rhode Island, as long as the federal the Obamacare piece of legislation is not overruled or held unconstitutional by the courts, you framed an issue here in terms of the states' rights, which is protected in the federal law. And you're going to have a preemption issue, or you're going to have a constitutional issue, which I think is perhaps good.
I agree, and that was taken into consideration when I contemplated putting this in. We got to get back to basics. There's no doubt about it. And I believe the leadership of my colleagues would agree, as well as the constituents. We're in financial dire straits, and not to get too far off the track of the bill, the purpose of the bill. We are looking at a massive expansion of Medicare and Medicaid, big hits to our right care and right share, the programs we have here in Rhode Island for our citizens. This is, to say it mildly, a financial boondoggle that may bring us to that day of reckoning, which we should have addressed 15 years ago, to tell you the truth. So I hope that answers your question. I hope this does frame some sort of rationale or a wake-up call, if you will, back to the basics. And if you have questions for any of the colleagues, the leadership, or my sponsors, feel free to do so. At this time, Representative Costa has a statement to make.
I just want to recognize Representative Larry Valencia. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
He is on the other side. We're Republicans. That's the bipartisanship there. I'd also like to mention something about Larry. Him and I share Exeter, which is great. I represent one half of Exeter, and there's the state rep that has the other half, and we were both at the Exeter Town Council meeting Monday night. So let's talk about working together, bipartisan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well said, Representative Costa. You know, And I'll wrap this up unless anyone else would like to further address the group if there's any other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Especially to the folks. We know that you have jobs. We know that you have lives. We know that you must sustain yourselves, especially in these trying economic times. And I thank you for making that sacrifice to come out here in support of this bill. Thank you. Kudos to you. God bless.
Thank you.